Firstly, guys, thank you all for coming. And I hope everyone is not staying. Perfect, because I feel very underqualified. All right. All right, guys. So, firstly, sorry for the title. So, it's supposed to read "Earthly and Heavenly Rewards." So, when Timmy asked me to do this, talks very loud. Okay. Yep. So he was saying, okay, earthly and heavenly rewards. What is the difference between earthly and heavenly rewards, and how can we shift our focus to the heavenly rewards? So, in life, if you study, you get a good result. If you work hard, you get a good job. The more you work, the more money you make, right? Earth is very, very linear. Sometimes it's like, you work hard, you get a good result. You study, you get in. Now, when it comes to heavenly kingdom or heavenly rewards, completely different ball game, right? Doesn't work like that. It's not straightforward, but it is very straightforward. Adam and Eve. Quick question: Adam and Eve, in the Garden of Eden, God told them, "Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil." If they had not eaten, would they have died? Shout it out. Yes or no? No. Yes. So if they had not eaten, if they didn't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, would they have died? No, right? How do we know? Because God told them, if you eat, you die. So if you don't eat, you live. Okay, so they're going to live regardless. What was the first command God gave Adam and Eve? Or gave Adam, rather? To eat from every single tree. So why do they need to eat? Does anyone see the problem that we have here? So these guys are going to live regardless, right? If they don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good, they're going to live. But the first command God tells them is to eat. Why? Oppa. Right? A bit of a problem here. Is hunger the issue? No, because if they had, not eaten, they would still have lived. But the point is that everyone was in the image of God, but you grow into His likeness, and food was the way of having communion with God, right? So, did Adam sow any of the trees? No, everything was there already. The trees are all readily available for Adam to eat, right? So him eating from the tree or eating from anything around him was him communing with God, him participating. Very important. Keep that in the forefront of your head. So the aim, right, of Adam in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, is to be in communion in a living relationship with God, right? Now I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. I need you to be engaged. Just shout out any question. Any answer, sorry. Okay. I'm going to ask you right now, what is the criteria to get into heaven? So right now, if our focus is on heaven, on communion with God and being in a living relationship with Him, how can I be in His kingdom? What is the criteria? If someone asks you, what is the criteria? Shout out the answers. Jonah. Love. Something else. Anything, yeah. Being Christian. Okay, anyone else? Someone at the back. What's the criteria to get into heaven? Someone asked you right now, what's the criteria to get into heaven? What are you saying? Faith? Love, faith, being Christian. Anything else? What do you guys think? Following the commandments of God, that's a pretty good one. Anything else? The criteria. What is the criteria? Someone asks you, why are you Christian, bro? To be in a relationship with God, to get, His kingdom or heaven is where God lives, to be in communion. So from the get-go, you see there's all these different answers to probably one of the most important questions, right? Imagine you having an exam, and I tell you, what's the criteria? And you say, oh, look, I'm not sure, man. It's like, you go into exam without knowing the actual, I think this is working. Yeah, perfect, sorry. Okay, perfect. All right, look, so I'm going to read a quick passage from Matthew 22, 1 to 4. If you want to have, if you have Bibles on your phones, I encourage you to read along. Actually, how about we all read one verse each? How about that? No, I'm just joking. We're not doing that. The first time I read this dawned on me. It changed the way. You read it so many times and you just pass it over, right? But I want you to pay careful attention to what happens, right, in this parable, right? So we read this during Pascha week, in Wednesday Eve, right? It's the first hour. So listen to this, right? So Jesus again spoke a parable to them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a marriage feast for his son, big wedding feast for his son, sent all his servants to call those who were invited to the marriage feast, but they would not come. Called the blokes, no one came. Again, he sent another servant, telling them, 'Tell those who are invited, behold, I have made ready my dinner, my oxen, my fat calves, and killed, and everything is ready. Come to the marriage feast.' But they made light of it and went off, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his servant, treated them shamefully, and killed them." Right? So the king was very angry and sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. All right, so everyone's getting the picture. He invited everyone had a wedding for his son, invited everyone. No one wanted to come, right? So listen to what he does. This is the key point here, right? So he said to his servants, "The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the highways and invite to the marriage feast as many as you find." Right, to the highways. Does it say highways in your translation? Yeah? Sorry. I'll keep pressing. This one doesn't. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, go into the highway and find everyone. I don't know. Where are we at? So the servants went out to the street, gathered all whom they found. Keyword, both good and bad, right? So the wedding hall was filled with guests. So he told them, go into the highways. Who stays in the highways back in those days? It's not like the M5. Back in the days, highways was like where all the thieves, all the sex workers used to stay there. Everyone that was shameful or didn't want to stay in the common area would stay in the highway. So good and bad people, right? So the criteria to enter into this wedding isn't being good because there's bad people here, right? So they filled the hall. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there was a man who had no wedding garment and said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment?" And he was speechless. And the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and cast him into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth for few, many are called but few are chosen." So this character, right? So there's now this wedding feast filled with bad and good people. A guy in there, he doesn't have a garment. How do you get in? What do you think? How did he get in? So this guy had nothing, right? Because everyone was bad. I think he jumped in through the window. Well, the key is that bad and good people were invited, right? No one was. So if I wasn't worthy, I was still invited. So assuming, right? So everyone that was in the wedding had a garment, right? So they were giving out free garments at the door, right? But this guy decided that he didn't need the garment, and he went in without a garment. So he must have jumped in through the window, whatever. So what actually makes you worthy, right, is this garment of entering this feast. Is this garment, not your actions, right? A bit controversial, right? Not me doing good works or me fasting and prayer. No, the garment. There's something that I wear that makes me worthy to enter into this kingdom into this wedding feast. Or, there we go. So it's not about, so the criteria is about wearing the garment, righteousness. We said the guy with no garment, he got in, but again, he wasn't wearing a garment. So what is this garment? Righteousness. What does that mean? What do you guys think? What's the word righteousness? Righteousness. Everyone has sinned, no one is righteous except for God. So Christ comes, fulfills everything. He is our righteousness. So this garment that we put on is Christ himself, right? So this garment, right, that covers us is Christ himself, his blood. And this is the beauty of our faith, that we don't believe in a faith that you just, you read a couple of beliefs and then no. We believe in a God that lives inside us, that covers us. So now you die. Imagine you die right now, Jonah. God forbid. And you're at the gate of heaven. The angel standing there tells you, "Jonah, why should I let you into the kingdom of heaven? Quick, why should you enter? I'm very upset. I'm a angel. I've been on a long shift. Give me a quick answer. Why should you enter the kingdom seal of baptism. What do you? Sorry, what's your name? Peter. What do you think? Peter's not sure. So, look, this angel's very upset, and he's not letting anyone in, because any answer that has the word, that has something that I have, right? My garment, my acts, my deeds of love, my Christianity, my faith, right? Anything that has the word I, or sort of includes the word I in it, kicks you out automatically, right? Why? Because it's not I, but Christ. So anything that has the word I in it, automatically kicks us out. So Isaiah chapter 6, listen to what he says. He goes, "We have all become like one who is unclean, and all our righteousness, all our righteous deeds are like filthy rags," right, in front of God. So all our righteousness, so everything good that we have in us, right? And I'm not saying this in kind of like a gloomy sense that, you guys are like we're all the worst. No, but in the eyes of God, anything good that we think we do are like filthy rags in front of Him, right? So the criteria automatically now, I was telling you at the start, right, that earthly rewards, you work for things, you get it. Christianity, it's different. Heavenly rewards, right? The act doesn't matter so much as the intention behind it, right? So you can come to church, and I tell this to our guys all the time. You can come to church half empty and go out completely empty. You can, do the most beautiful things, service, like anything, like do everything that's good with the wrong intention, and that thing itself becomes wrong, right? We used to have this guy that used to be a deacon, used to come early before Abuna, then he started coming later and later and later. He started coming like after the gospel, then he started coming like after the offertory, then after the gospel, then towards the end of the mass. Like he used to be very late. All the Amuls went to the Abuna and is like, El Wadda, بيعمل drugs, he's clubbing every single night. Khalas, Abuna, save him. It turns out that this guy, his teta's mate needed a lift, so he went and picked her up for church. And then it turns out the other teta's mate needed a lift, and then he created like this little teta club. He used to pick every single one of them up for church. So by the time he came to church, it was like already pretty much done. But his intention was right. You can apply that to everything. In Matthew 24, there's an example. There's two ladies at the windmill, both sitting there, crushing the wheat, and it says one was taken and one was left. Right? Both were doing the exact same thing, exerting the exact same effort. One had the internal disposition, and one was just doing it for the sake of. So the internal, right? Internal guides the external stuff. So I'm not saying that the external is not important, but I'm saying is the external without the internal is void. In actual fact, it becomes disastrous. And, when you hear stories about, Saint Theophan, this guy, I love this guy. He's a Russian saint, canonized I think in 1980s, I think it was. They asked him, why is it that people, when they come to church, they become more mad, right? Instead of become more loving, they become more judging. Instead of becoming more giving, they become more stingy. Instead of become more cheerful, they become more gloomy, and they hate each other and they judge, right? And he goes, for one reason, they're not interested in Christ. They try to be Christian without Christ. We try to do things, we try to come to church and do all these things for our own righteousness or for our own ego, or so what people will say, or whatever it might be. So the intention matters even more. Okay, so let's bring it back to heavenly rewards. So we're saying here, hopefully the message is sending the message through that it's nothing that I do, right? It's really small. Let's move away from this Christianity without Christ. In Isaiah 59, something I also love, verse 15 to 16. Just verse 16. It says, God saw there was no man and wondered there was no one who could intervene. He said the earth was like in derelict, essentially. It was really bad. Everything was, who could save the world? So then his own arm bore him victory, and his own righteousness upheld him. His own arm, Christ's own arm, bore him victory, and his own righteousness upheld him. What's the arm of God? Hint, it's on the screen. What's the arm of God? The cross. So whenever you hear the word the arm of God, the arm, right, that's God's own righteousness, right? So that's why we always put the cross at the very top of every single church. Any single Orthodox church you go to, no matter what denomination, you always see the highest point will always have the cross, because his own arm stretches it, nails down, is what brought him salvation, is what draws everyone to him. To the extent where we don't stop there, the church doesn't stop, right? We put an ostrich egg there. Anyone know why we put an ostrich egg? Common answer. Someone give me a shout out the answer. Ostrich egg, why? Someone has to know. Go. How big is it? Is it because it's like ostrich looks at the egg all right? Yeah, 100%. So the ostrich egg is one of the few birds that doesn't leave its eggs, right? Now let's say there's 2 eggs sitting underneath this ostrich egg, right? One egg says, I'm going to stay underneath my mum's wings. One says, I'm packing up, I want to roll away and live away from my mother's wing. What happens to the egg that stays underneath the mother's wing? What happens to it in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, 40 days, whatever that is? It hatches, right? Why? What happened to it? What did it receive from the mum? What did it receive?
Protection.
What else? What did it receive? Something visible, something that it receives from the mum? Warmth, heat, life itself, right? So the egg, right, by just choosing, by doing nothing but just staying under the mum's wings, receives heat and life, right? And that's exactly what happens to us. And that's why, right, we say, Christ, when he was on his way back to Jerusalem, says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I wish to gather you as a chicken gathers her eggs under her wings," right? So the church puts the ostrich egg right underneath the wing of our eagle, right? It says that if you choose to stay underneath the eagle's wing, you get life, right? It's something that you don't see, right? And this is the hardest part about all of this, right? The hardest part in all this is that you pray, you go to church, you do all these things, and you don't see physically. Like, you know, when I study, I do an exam, I get 100% in the exam, or whatever it might be, you know. I work hard in my job, I get recognition, something physical. But the issue with, like for us, right, is that it's sometimes not tangible. You don't see the heat that's being transferred from the chicken, from the ostrich to its eggs, but in due time it hatches, right? So, all of this and where we are right now. So we're saying that, perfect. So we're saying here that, you know, it's God's righteousness is what gets us through the heavenly rewards. It's all about Christ's righteousness. Almost done, as you guys can see. We're going to jump in finally, just because I think we're over time, into the right-hand thief. One of my favorite characters in all of Pascha, in all of scriptures, in everything. The right-hand thief is my man. This guy is unbelievable. Not because, like, you know, he won the kingdom of heaven or any of that, like, even that's pretty good. But listen to what this guy says, right? We're going to, if anyone has their Bibles, Luke 23 is where we're at. Luke 23, I promise, like, if you can see the slides, there's pretty much like 1 or 2 more left. No, one more left. Okay, to paint the picture, we're now at the cross. The right-hand thief, left-hand thief. Christ is now nailed down in between the two of them. And then Luke, we're going to jump to Luke verse 39. So one of the criminals hanging with Christ rallied at him saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." Right? He's telling him, like, if you're real Christ, come down and save us with you. What did the other do? He rebuked him, saying, do you not fear God, since you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due rewards of our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong. And he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And then he said to him, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. I read that so many times, but there's so much mystery in those few words, right? He says something. He says something, the key criteria for us, right? What is this? What's the one word that just jumps at you? Any word that just jumps at you from reading or from hearing that? Again, listen to what he says. Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? We indeed justly received our reward for our deeds, but this man did nothing wrong. Anything jump at you there? What did this thief do to inherit the kingdom of heaven? What did he say? Anything? Something we were talking about before. He said something. He said, look, I am not worthy. Right? In essence, he's saying, I stuffed up, we stuffed up, not me, Lord, but you. Right? And that's the key criteria for all of us. Like our intention, the way we approach, heavenly rewards is not me, right? So that when we think, when we are in communion with God and when we step into heaven, it's not us. So the criteria to get through to the kingdom of heaven that broke Christ, the thing that broke him, is that he said, look, we are stuffed up. He confesses. He says, there is nothing in me, but there is everything in you. So, and if anyone thinks that's easy, if you actually think that's pretty easy, then try having confession. It's a big hit to the ego. It's the one thing that we all avoid doing, confession. And if you don't have a confession father, then get one. Get one today, ASAP. A man, the church fathers say, a person, right, who chooses himself as a spiritual guide has chosen a fool and a blind man. If you choose yourself as a spiritual guide, then you have chosen a fool and a blind man, because it's like a blind leading the blind, a dead leading the dead. So, key number one, guys, if you take anything from tonight, if you don't confess, you probably should confess. If you don't have a spiritual father or a confession father, find one, get one. Abuna Josh is amazing, actually. If he wasn't Kellyville, I'd probably come down. If you don't like Abuna Josh, like Sydney has, I don't know how many other priests. But yeah, it'd be insane not to go with Abuna Josh. Shout out to Abuna Josh for the recording. But key, why? It keeps you accountable. First thing, right? It keeps you accountable, keeps you on track. Find someone that you can tell everything, right? Your deepest thoughts, everything. Why? Early church, you know what they used to do? You think it's bad telling one of my boys was like, one of Sunday school boys was like, oh, it's so annoying. Like, Abuna's going to judge me. Like, I'm going to tell him my stuff. He's going to think so. What's he going to think about me, man? I'm like, you think that's bad, man? Back in the days, you like in the early church, you know what you had to do when you went confession? You didn't confess to Abuna. You confess on Sunday when the church is packed in front of everyone. So the church is full, and it did a pretty good job at keeping people in check, because you didn't want to tell your deepest, darkest secrets in front of everyone. But the church in its wisdom said, okay, let's keep it between Abuna and you. So key number one, yeah. So the look that, it's pretty much, I don't know if you're talking about the same thing, but imagine, it's pretty bad. So find a confession father and speak to him, someone that guides you, someone that you trust, like a coach along the way. Second thing, right, that I like is a non-negotiable. Your personal, private prayer life is fundamental. If you do not pray, do not expect anything. If you take anything from tonight, from anything, then pray. If you do not pray, guys, I'm being dead serious. It's like you saying, I'm going to go to Egypt tomorrow, and you haven't booked a flight. And then everyone's like, have you booked a flight? And then you're like, no. I'm like, how are you going to get there? You need to book the flight. It's like, no, don't worry. It's like, no, you have to book the flight. Like, you know, it's frustrating because like we say, oh, I don't feel God. Do you pray? What? Like, when I pray, I don't feel God. I don't feel like praying. Yeah, no one feels like studying. I don't feel like going to work anyway. I do it anyway. No one feels. So prayer is pivotal, right? And the devil's very smart, right? You know what the devil does? The devil. Do you guys know what sin is? Like the word actual sin. Do you know what sin means? Right, the actual word, right? It means to miss the mark. Right? Literally, sin means literally missing the mark. Imagine like like you guys have done archery, like at camps and stuff. You try to hit the bullseye. The bullseye is actually pretty funny. It's like apparently back in the days, before archery was a thing, like the archers would just go around, they'd hit a random target, and they'd say, "Yep, I hit the target." With it, so they'd just shoot the arrow at random. They'd hit a tree, and I said, "Yeah, I hit a tree." So this one king came along and he said, "Hey, I want to see if these guys are actually good or not. Like, are they, actually good archers?" So he'd put a red dot, and he would tell them, "Hit that target." And what happened? They all missed the target. And so the bad archers, they'd go to their houses and they'd paint a massive red dot over their house, just to make fun of them, like because they're missing that target. They're not actually good. And that's what sin is, right? One of my friends that he does archery, he goes, he does archery profession. He goes, when they train you, it's not about aiming in the right direction. It's aiming in the right direction to the millimeter, to the extent where if you they've got this little, not a protractor, but you get the image. They go, and this thing, if it moves by 1 millimeter, or 2 degrees, degrees, not millimeter, degrees, they go off degrees, you don't just miss the bullseye, you miss the target completely, right? And that's what the devil does. He doesn't say, "Oh, Abe, don't pray tonight. TK, go to sleep." No. He gives you a gentle nudge until you go to church. Of course, you have to go to church. But then when you get to church, look at Jonah's on his phone again. Naomi's not wearing her scarf in church. Look at this Hamo. If I hear one more Kriya song, the Hamo's voice is so horrible, I'm going to die. Instagram goes off. Check Instagram. Telephone. Right? Small, gentle nudges. That's what he does. Right? If you're going to pray, get up and pray, yeah? But our Father, or why our Father? Just do the sign of the cross and go to bed. Right? The devil's very smart. Small, gentle nudges. But the key is, right? Prayer is essential. 2 things. Everyone hates these words. The D and the C word. Discipline and consistency. Right? Everybody hates them. Father Thomas Hopkins, if you guys there's millions of sermons out there on how to pray. The key message, or the message is, you just have to do it. You've got to be disciplined, and you pray as you can. I said pray as you can, not as you want. A lot of people say that, I'll just pray as I want. No, as you can. And that's why, again, you go to a confession father or a spiritual father who directs your prayer, tells you, and then you do it anyway. If you don't feel like praying, you shut up and you do it anyway. One of the guys at our church says, you shut up and you show up. Keep your mouth shut and just do it. Again, the fathers say, forced prayer, when you force yourself to pray, is higher than unforced prayer. So a person that's in the city, us living in day-to-day lives, praying in the midst of all the distraction is higher than a monk in the heart of the desert that sits there for hours and hours praying with their hands on fire. Right? That's not me making that up. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what fathers say. Right? So prayer, right, with all the distractions that are happening in our times, is higher than everything. Finally, my last point, and this is the culmination of everything, right, and I'll tell you the story to wrap it all up, right, is the liturgy, right? Again, if you don't pray at home, if you don't have personal private prayer, you come to the liturgy and you're just right? What are we doing here? So with the proviso that we have a confession father and we have personal private prayer, the liturgy is fundamental, right? Liturgy literally means the work. liturgy, literally, liturgia means the work of the people, right? So you come to church to work, right? Some people think, the Mass is boring. I don't like the liturgy. The Mass isn't supposed to be a show, right? Some people think that, like, we'll come watch. Sometimes I honestly think, I know my this part, sometimes I think that we've got the best drama. You come here, you've got, people that see, you've got nice comfortable chairs, doing a good performance, right? You come and watch a nice show, you have body and blood at the end, and it's all sweet and dandy. The only thing that's missing is the popcorn, right? Like, it's just a nice, beautiful show. Liturgy isn't supposed to be nice. Like, hey, honestly, newsflash, if someone comes and says liturgy, I am yet to meet someone that says, liturgy, I enjoyed it, I just love being there the whole time, right? Because it's work. You're supposed to come and work. If the deacon is reading something, right, then you listen. If they're saying, Lord have mercy, you say, Lord have mercy. You engage in everything. Look, admittedly, like we do, like deacons, especially like deacons here, like we do a very bad job at. And this is where, like, I speak to myself first. We fall into the trap of just going through the motions. Like, we just go through the motions of everything, right, without being true, with no spirit of action for it, and then people fall into that. But again, my advice to you guys, like, my genuine advice, like, try to see through it, right? Try to see through it. If the liturgy, if you find it bad and horrible, and the deacons are like if you come to my church, it's really bad. There's one uncle there, like, God forgive me, but like, we try to, like, always say, try to see through it, right? Because the culmination of the liturgy, right, the body and blood of Christ going back, there's a reason why Adam and Eve, right, had to eat, right? The communion with God, right? And then the continuation of that is here. We eat our God. Think of that for a second. You eat your God. And that's the beauty of Christianity, right? We don't believe in a God that's so far and removed from us, so a God that's pie in the sky, that's in heaven, that if you do good things, he'll clap, and when you do bad things, he frowns and turns around away from you. The complete opposite. If you're the more of a sinner you are, the closer you are to God. And then you come to the liturgy, and then when you eat the body and blood of Christ, you literally live in him. And to finish up a story, maybe this contextualize this thing a bit more. Abuna was telling us a story when he first got ordained. An older priest, he goes to Abuna, nothing is more powerful in this world than the liturgy. Right? Nothing is more powerful than the liturgy. He's like, why? I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you guys know Egypt, but Egypt, like, they all live in apartments, right? And the apartments, they all live next to each other. Like, it's like apartments, but it's pretty much like community. He goes, there's one lady, she's Christian, like nothing special, anything like that. She's got a Muslim neighbor who are really good friends. She had the Christian lady, her daughter was getting engaged, so they're doing like an engagement, like a dinner at her house, and invited all the neighbors. So Abuna went as well to do the prayers. But Abuna was saying, I was like, we did the prayer and everything, everyone was saying hello. This one Muslim lady comes, she kisses my hand, and she wouldn't let go. She's grabbing it, and she's like, she kissing it with such reverence. And then she grabs the cross, right? And she kisses it and puts it over her head. Muslim lady, right? And if you guys don't know, like, for Muslims, the cross is one of the most scandalous things. Like, I've got a close mate who's Muslim. Like, for them, the cross, like, they believe in Jesus, in Mary, Christ's birth, everything that is, great. The cross for them is the most scandalous thing. They hate the cross. Right? So this lady, comes and kisses his cross. Abuna was like, I was really shaken, very moved by that encounter. Because like, next day in the liturgy, he couldn't stop thinking about this lady, how much reverence this lady showed to the cross and his hand. Like, she's just kissing his hand more than the cross. Like what's going on? So he went up to the Christian lady and was like, Tanta Munira, what's the story with your Muslim neighbor? Like, what's happening with her? He's like, Abuna, Ta'ala, I'll tell you a story. This lady has a daughter who's demon possessed. She's got a demon in her. Now the demon goes through peaks and troughs, like pushes her through peaks and troughs, right? When She goes in these moods, she goes crazy, breaks the entire apartment, she'll grab things and she'll throw it across the apartment, flip tables, like she'd want to kill herself and us with her. Very like traumatic. We took her 3 years through, we thought psychological illness, we thought nothing, no one could help us, right? One day, this lady, like we heard all the screaming and the breaking of everything. She's saying one day I went to the liturgy and I just got back from the liturgy, right? Jumped into my apartment. We can obviously hear the screaming and everything. We knew what was going on. The Muslim lady comes and knocks at my door and she's like, please, ta'ali sa'adini, bitti, shaitan rakibha. Like the devil, if you understand Arabic, shaitan, like the devil is like, forcing her to go into this phase of madness. The lady was like, so one second, your daughter has, and the Muslim lady is like, come please say one of your prayers or say something to help her. The lady was like, hold on a second, like, yeah, I'm Christian and everything. I get scared of like seeing a cockroach in the floor. Your daughter has a devil, I'm definitely not going anywhere near that apartment. Like, I get scared from my shadow, let alone the devil. He's like, no, ma'alish, like, khaliha, like, next time. He was like, next time my daughter's going to kill herself, please. She kept on begging me to come to her apartment. So the lady was like, look, Abuna, I said in my head, I just had communion, I'll go into the apartment, I say, our Father, right, do the sign of the cross and leg it. So I did my part, right, so I can't say I didn't do my part. She goes, I set it in the apartment, right, the girl stops and she just looks at her. It's like, yeah. She goes, all I did the sign of the cross, right, started saying, our Father, who art in heaven. The girl starts screaming, goes ballistic, and then she's like, her voice changed. Like when she goes through these phases, her voice changes to like a man's voice, and like a deep voice. She's like, we just heard her voice, she's like, and hatla khalas, and then she screams, and the devil left. And like, nothing special about this lady, hasn't done crazy fasts or anything, doesn't fast extra 5 days or anything like that. Just went to the liturgy, and the devil saw that. So the demons, even the demons believe and they fear. But us, we partake of it, we live it, we do everything. We come to youth meetings, Bible study, yada, yada, yada. We do everything by the book. And what does it do to our life? So if you probably go home tonight, you forget everything we said today, socialize, you have a good time tonight. But before you go to bed tonight, here's my challenge for you guys. And I say this to everyone. For some of you, you feel like, oh yeah, like praying isn't even on your mind. Like, I'll be honest, like I'm just talking about myself here. Not like, I don't know a lot of people here, so I'm not judging anyone or anything. Like, I'm projecting. But I'm saying, like, I come back home and prayer isn't even on my mind, right? Or if it does come, then the thought will be like, maybe tomorrow. Challenge yourself to force yourself to pray. And when you don't want to, pray even more, right? Not pray even more like you're going to read the whole Akbiyah. No, I'm saying when you don't feel like doing it, then do it even more. The canon, like what your spiritual father tells you to do it, and you'll see. See what happens to your life. I'm not saying your life is going to become, all of a sudden you become the richest person or anything like that, right? Because what we know from the Bible is that when people are closer to God, their life sometimes got even worse than what it was when they were away from God. Like, things become even worse sometimes. So problems with God, when you're close with God, your problems aren't solved, right? They're dissolved. You get it? Now you got it dissolved, right? The problem is still there, but it no longer becomes a problem for you, right? Not because the problem is fixed, not because of the situation, but because you are, right? We see things the way we are, not the way they are. Think about that for a second. You see things the way you are, not the way the actual situation is. Like someone will tell you, this person did this, like this, case in point, like this, someone comes and tells you, Jonah, you're stupid, right? A little 4-year-old kid in Sunday school tells you, Jonah, you're stupid. What happens, Jonah? You just brush it off. You're like, who cares, right? Right? He's a little kid. The story that you tell yourself is that he's a little kid. What about if now TK or Mark came and told you, Jonah, what happens? All of a sudden, or like, let's take it one step further. What if Abuna Josh comes and tells you that the story that you tell yourself now is, Abuna Josh was belittling me. Abuna, no, I'm not saying Abuna for the recording. No. And yeah, Abuna Josh. But the story that you tell yourself is that, he insulted me. Karamti, you hear all the stories. Hanuni, the ha'i, all this crazy, all this madness, right? All the stories that you tell yourself, but someone else, you tell them this, whatever. Do you wake up next morning dumber because someone called you dumb? No, you don't. But you see these things the way you are. When you're living with Christ, not you're saying your life becomes magical and dandy, but when you live in communion with God, the peace and the joy, say, is overflowing. You see the old monks, this guy was living in the desert for 40 years, they're asking, what did you find in the depth of the desert for 40 years by yourself in heat? There's no cold water if you're thirsty. There's no water even if you're thirsty. He goes, what I found is a deep friendship with Christ. And I thought it was going to become some like theological, he saw angels and the devils fighting against each other. Guys, the only thing I found is a deep relationship with God, and that was enough. And glory be to God forever and ever.
Any questions? Any questions? No? No questions? No? Okay. We're going to take a photo and stand up for prayer in a second. Just a couple of things.